Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, Lick Diamonds. We are back again. Pastor Johnny Kelly.
What's up? How
What's
you
up, brother?
doing?
We actually went bass fishing this time before the podcast.
We've been doing it after, and
we both
good.
landed at least one lunker, had a couple more on, a couple nice strikes, and we're now at the tires in Lake Eloise watching what used to be Cypress Gardens.
Yeah,
watching Legoland, the skiers.
Yeah, they're out there practicing their skis. We just watched them do a backflip. It was pretty cool.
Very cool. So, guys, if you are watching this on YouTube, you get to see a little bit of the background, the tires you might recognize from the famous old Cypress Gardens. If you're listening on the podcast, know that we are outside having an excellent day. A little cold front came through, and we're going to be talking about purpose. This is, I'm sure at your church, this is a popular theme. I think it's probably one of the most popular themes in life. Why are we here, right? What is our purpose in life? And this is something that I struggle with for many, many years. The majority of my life. It wasn't until recently that a few things happened, and some of you guys have heard from me in the story with cancer and anxiety attacks, and just the journey that we all take in life, becoming closer with God and changes in our faith, and really just defining what our purpose is and asking those tough questions like, what is my special gift? Why am I here? Do I matter? And maybe some of you are going through a tough time, and I get it, because I was like that at my lowest lows, where I didn't think I mattered. I didn't think I had a purpose at all or any kind of mission. And we're going to talk about the three things, and you've shared this with your church, and I love the way you just simplified it. We'll talk about the three things, but first, I want to talk about Toy Story.
Yeah.
Tell because it's a great analogy.
Yeah, what it comes down to for us is and we're not the only church that does it. There's lots of churches that take this sort of method, but the idea of, and we teach it to our churches, that, that the goal is to know God, find freedom, discover your purpose, and then make a difference with that purpose. And so for us, the idea starts all in knowing God. And so obviously we're talking about God and church and everything. And so the idea, the basis of understanding that you got to know Jesus to get there, and explain it like this. Like if we're starting from the point of believing that we are created by God, that he created us, then it stands to reason that in order to find the purpose that we have, the Bible says over and over and over again that he created us on purpose. He created us with a purpose. It says that before you were even formed in the womb, that he had a plan for you. He had something that you were good at and that you were created for. Like I tell my church all the time, like, you're a 10 at something. Like, everybody you might think that you're worthless, but there is something that you are created to do better than anybody else. There is something that you are perfect for, that you're a 10 at. And so the idea is to find that, and to find that thing, you have to really, it starts at the very beginning of just knowing God, like knowing who he is. And the analogy I used earlier with you is the idea of, like, Toy Story, the idea of, if you watch the old movie Toy Story,
great flick.
If you got little kids and you've watched them all, I love them all. The very first Toy Story, it has all these toys. They know they're toys. They know that they belong to Andy. Their names his name's on their foot, like, magic marker. Like, it is, that what your purpose is. And then all of a sudden, this toy shows up that doesn't know why he was made. You got Buzz Lightyear shows up, and he thinks he's a space ranger. He thinks he thinks he is actually what he is a toy of, as opposed to understanding that he was created for a purpose. And at one point, he feels like he's not good enough. He finds out, if you watch the movie, at some point he gets sad, he gets depressed because I'm just a toy. But then all of a sudden he realizes that, no, wait, I was created for something that was really important. I was created to bring joy to this child. I was created for this. And he discovers who his creator was, why he was created, and what his goal is. And then all of a sudden he becomes, integrated in this great community, this family, and this group of people that help move his life along, and he finds happiness, he finds joy, he finds fulfillment, all because he's doing what he was created to do, which was to make Andy happy. Yeah. And in the same way, I think so often we think our purpose has to be one thing, and our purpose changes. Yep. It moves. 20 years ago, you asked me what my purpose was, I would have told you to be in a rock band. That's what I did. I played music for a living. And And now I realize that that wasn't my purpose. That was just a step to get me to where my purpose is. That my purpose, but it taught me stuff. I learned how to be in front of people and to communicate and talk and be comfortable in that way.
Be
And
up on a stage.
be up on a stage. Like it taught me all those things, and it made me better at what I do now. And so it wasn't like a waste of time. It was just that wasn't my purpose. I thought it was. I was trying to find it. And so the first step is just knowing God, know who He is. And then the way we take you through it at our church is you know God, and then you find freedom. What's that mean? Finding freedom from your past, from your history, from the things that you used to do, whether it's, sinful things or whether it's just finding freedom from stuff that's holding you back. If you're somebody who has walked in, self-pity or depression or anxiety or just pain or history, finding freedom from what the world says is normal, and understanding that, wait, I know God, I know He created me on purpose, that I'm a 10 at something. He made me to do so. He made me specifically to do something. Like, He doesn't make mistakes. He didn't make a mistake with you or me. He created you for that. And so we know that, and so then you find freedom from the stuff that holds you back from that. And then the next step we talk about at church is discovering what your purpose is. Like, why were you created? Like I said, it says in Ephesians, Timothy, like multiple places throughout the Bible, it says, before you were born, while you were in your mother's womb, before you were in your mother's womb, I created you. I planned for you. Like, God planned you out, and He created you to do something, that He has a purpose, and that purpose, is not for failure. It's to bring hope, And so the idea of knowing God, knowing why you were created, finding freedom from the stuff that's held you back, and then discovering what your purpose is, and then finally for us is, using that purpose to make a difference in the world. Like, I firmly believe that you'll never find true joy or happiness until you're being fulfilled and using the gifts that God gave you, using the purpose that He created you for Him.
And that's where you see growth. Just like Buzz Lightyear, that's where he started growing as a person or a toy, as an individual. That's really where the growth happens too, right?
It happens when you find what you're supposed to be. If you were created to do something, it stands to reason that you're not going to find true joy and happiness till you find that. And you'll find moments of great, awesome, peace and coolness, but it's not about what the world says it's about. You're an example. You and your brother, you guys had great jobs and made good money, and all of a sudden, but you didn't have joy. You weren't at peace because there wasn't a fulfillment there. You weren't operating in the purpose that you were created to operate in. And it wasn't until you said, I need to find freedom from what the world says is important and find the peace and find the purpose that I was created to. And then you start operating in that, and all of a sudden you start finding this joy. You start finding fulfillment and feeling like your life is worth something, that you're doing something that makes sense. And until you find that, I think you're always going to you'll have great moments, but you're always going to struggle. I know I did. I spent even in ministry I did, until I found. I spent years as a youth pastor, as an evangelist. I worked at different churches in lots of different formats for years. It wasn't until I really felt God say, hey, I want you to start a new church and plant a new church. And I did. I started our church, Discover Family Church. And it wasn't until I stepped into that. And the best way to describe it is, all of a sudden I felt like I was in my own skin. Like, oh, wait, I'm doing what I was created to do. And I found that purpose. And I think that and I know that God created all of us with that purpose, and true fulfillment comes whenever you start operating in what you were created to operate in.
And one other thing too, and I know someone's listening to this thinking, because you mentioned, put God first as part of this trifecta, and for me personally, God was last, meaning, and this is just being completely candid, I was figuring out this whole, what makes me happy. And if we're going to talk about, hey, if you had just unlimited amounts of money, what would you do? What would get you up every morning excited? And then there's the God piece. And for me, that was the last piece of the trifecta for me personally. Yeah. And everyone's on a different journey with their faith. But that was the one thing I knew was missing. I kept getting closer, and I was like, all right, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm more fulfilled. But that was really the last piece. And I think one of the biggest problems out there And just looking back at kind of some of my low moments they weren't that long ago in terms of my life. It was with all the social media stuff. You see not just celebrities, but even your friends that only post the good stuff out there. Maybe it's friends you haven't seen in a while or college friends, and you're constantly comparing yourselves to them or to other people in your peer group or your age group.
Yeah.
And all you're seeing are your negative traits. You're not seeing that one thing that God created you for, that 10. And I know, because I did that forever. And I'm like, well, man, why can't I be better like this person at this thing? And why can't I have the kind of money he has or been born in this kind of family? And it's so easy to get down on yourself, especially if you're just having a rough time in life. When I had those anxiety attacks, usually when you start doing that, you can't go outside. You're on social media. I'm inside by myself. I'm comparing myself to others. And that was like a low.
And you don't even know where they're coming from.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, why can't I be like him? Look at all these nice cars and
yeah.
But what he's not showing you on Instagram is the piles of debt that he's drowning in order to put out the persona of what he has. In
some cases not, but he might have a horrible relationship. He might be going through a divorce right now, or just we're all broken.
Even in the simple ways, I look at I know a lot of moms struggle with this because they see the Instagram moms that are like perfect, but here's the problem is that outside of the frame of that square little picture on Instagram, their house looks just as trash as yours. I mean that kid has got a dirty diaper and he might be looking cute at that moment, but that kid yells and screams at a restaurant. It's life. It's life, and we paint like a false narrative, a false picture of what life is, and just sort of forget that. Wait a minute, everybody struggles, and it's hard for everybody, and faking it till you make it when it comes to finding fulfillment, it isn't really what God wants. I mean, it's not about faking it, because faking it is just simply that. It's faking it, but what he wants is just you to try and find freedom from those things, like you're talking about, the things that are holding you back, and find the fulfillment that operate in the way that he wants to be happy because you're happy. He is seeking for you to be happy, and you're going to be happy when you're doing what you were created to do.
Yep.
I mean, it's just the way it works.
I think looking back, some of the worst advice I got as a kid, knowing what I know now, and I don't know, this is tough for me to say, and someone's going to hate me for saying this, but was that it's good to be well-rounded. Just be well-rounded. And I think at some point in your life you need to try a lot of stuff to be well-rounded. But when you start doing that, and you never get good at one thing, and now look at today's age, if you're not a specialist at something, you're generalists usually don't do as well. And I'm not saying you can't be a generalist at something, but in general, if you're not concentrating on that one thing that you just have that passion for, you might end up unfulfilled because of it. And I always was, I don't want to go too far down this path, even though I really love it, because I was always told it's good to be well-rounded. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, a perfect example with fishing is there's a reason why Salt Strong has different pros.
Yeah.
You got Deeks, who's just he has zoned in on live bait. Yeah, yes. He can use the other stuff, but he knows.
He is an expert.
He is an expert.
He's not a generalist. He is an expert.
Yeah, he's an expert at that. You look at Tony, who just become like this savant when it comes to kayaking and paddleboarding.
He doesn't even know how to fish off a boat.
Yeah, he has no idea. I mean, he doesn't. I don't know if he knows how to walk. I think he just knows how to pedal. You have these specialists that work so well in that one area, and it doesn't mean they don't get to experience the other areas, but and that happens everywhere in life. The doctors that make the most money aren't just general practitioners; they're surgeons that specify in one specific field, and they become just a savant at one thing.
Yes.
And it's not bad to be able to go, look, I was created for one thing. I was created to do something specific.
Yes.
And to do it well. I know for me, I know a lot of pastors and different guys who write books and stuff like that, and I've tried, and I am not created. I'm not that guy. I can't do it. I wasn't created to do that. It's not my thing. I know you've written your book and did an awesome job at it, but it's just not something that fits me.
Yep.
And I had to one day look at it and go, that's not that doesn't mean I'm less than the ones that do.
Right. That's the comparing yourself to others. It could kill you.
I'm not less than the ones that do, because my purpose wasn't to write a book.
Yep.
That's just not what my purpose was. And it's finding those little things that you go, man, this is what I was made to do. Which I think is probably the hardest part for a lot of people, is trying to find it.
But once you do find it, to my point about the well-rounded thing is great when you're starting out, but once you find that thing that just lights you up, go all in and don't let anyone else distract you. This is a reason that Salt Strong took so long to grow, to get where we are, is we were trying to please everyone and do all this stuff. Well, hey, they're selling lures over here, they're doing apparel or what all, and we're like, our gift was a community. And that's what we got excited for. We love building the community. We love uniting families through fishing. And every time that we've gone against that, even if it was to make a quick buck or because we saw someone else doing it, we've regretted it. And every time we've just stayed in our lane and just gone, like in the biblical, or not biblical, I've seen some pastors talk about just leaning in, right? Leaning into life and to love and to God and the gospel. Every time we've leaned in to just our community, like everything has happened in a good way. We felt more fulfilled. We feel like we're fulfilling our purpose. Our group's happier. Our customers are happier. Like everything is like aligned and working. And every time we've tried to do too much, we've regretted it. So, but I want to spend time talking about these three things as well, because I think everyone could agree with what we said so far. But it's all right. How do you define your purpose besides praying over it?
Yeah, because I don't want to give like just esoteric sort of broad answers. Like how do you find it? And I can tell you what I teach at our church and what I believe and how this works. At least a way to find what your purpose, what you're created to do. And I think the answers lie inside of us already. It's just sort of unlocking what that is. And for us, the way I like to describe it is sort of like picture like the world's simplest connect the dots ever. It's a triangle.
Connect the dots.
Yeah,
okay.
Remember those little connect the dots? So picture 3 points, and so there's just a triangle here, and so each of these points is one of the three things. And so the first one being your personality. We all were born with a certain personality. We were talking about our kids earlier. Like I have one kid that is just hard as nails and another one that's just soft and sugary sweet. Like they're totally different kids. Their personalities, they were born with different personalities. But also, personality is also something that gets nurtured. You grow up in a rough area, your personality is going to have more of an abrasive edge probably. If you grow up in a struggling family, it can have a different edge than if you grew up in a family that is full of a lot of love and vice versa. So there is obviously some nurture involved, but we're also just born with our personality, and nurture, I think the world sort of helps sculpt it. But you have your personality, like what you're like, what you talk like, what you think like, how your personality. So you take that, like you get your personality up here, and then the next point on the 3 points would be your gifts, the giftings that you have. Like once again, God created you to do something. What are you good at? Like what are you good at? Are you good at, for me, like it's, I'm not good at administrative stuff when it comes to church. I'm good at communicating and talking.
Yep.
And so like, what am I good at? Well, I'm good at that. And you sort of figure out the gifts that God gave you, what you were born with, what you're got. You have a talent, you have a natural ability to do. Like where are your gifts at? And they're not always things. Like that gifting could be like, I'm good at listening to people. I'm good at, I'm good at, just believing and seeing the best in people. Like that might. So it's not always like I'm good at, working on a car. It might not be something quite so tangible. It could be I'm good at whatever, fill in the blank. Well, what are you good at? Like what are you good? And you might go, well, I'm not good at anything. You're good at something.
Yes.
And trust me, everybody is. And so you find that thing, and I'm good at being a friend and just loving people and making people feel comfortable. That is a gift, man. And because there are a lot of people that struggle to try and be that person.
Yes.
And so you take your personality, the way you were created, like who you are, then you take the gifts, the things that you're good at. And then finally, the idea of what is your passion. You said it earlier, like if money was no object, if you weren't worrying about what you were going to do financially, if a job wasn't an issue, you woke up tomorrow morning and you had $10 million and I went to you and said, hey, look, money's never going to be a problem ever again. and I want you to make a difference in the world, make the world a better place. What would you do? What's the first thing? What's that thing that when you go to bed you're thinking about? What's that thing when you wake up you're thinking about? Like the thing you're passionate about. You know, I was out fishing over in the lagoon a couple weeks ago, and I was with Goritsky, Alex Goritsky, and he's been on the podcast, the regular podcast before, and that guy is passionate about our waterways.
Yeah.
Like he knows more than it. Like the guy is so incredibly smart and good at it, and he understands like what's happening with the algae and the tides and all this stuff. And he is passionate about it. Like, yes, he loves fishing and taking people. He has a blast doing it, but he is passionate about sustaining our ecosystem here in Florida. And so it's finding what you're passionate about. And so whenever you take their personality and you take the gifts that you have and you take your passion and you draw this triangle, this 3-point connect the dots, that right in the center of that is going to be your purpose, the thing that you are created to do. Because the thing you're created to do is going to use your personality. It's going to use the things you're passionate about, and it's going to use the things that you're good at. It's going to use all of those things to tie you together to become a better version of who you are. And so I for us, that's the three things, the 3 steps that we teach at church, and that I preach it, I talk about it. The idea of like, hey, you know, God created you with a purpose, and that purpose is tied right directly with the way that Jesus created your personality, your passions, and your gifts. You know, all 3 of those things create who you are and how you can find true joy and fulfillment. I mean,
the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
And the trifecta. And I feel like we talk about growth, and usually if you're not growing, you know, Tony Robbins says you're not growing, you're dying, right?
Yeah.
And usually if you're not growing and you're having one of those maybe chapters in your life or a time in your just overall journey through life, that usually if you're not growing, you're acting outside of that trifecta. Right, and a lot of times you need to get back in there to do things that are, you know, making you fulfilled, like with your purpose, that just keep you happy. I want to talk about, and this is where I get confused personally when I'm trying to explain to people. I'm very lucky that my purpose ties in with my job, and for you guys wondering, like mine, and I have this written down, and this would be one of my big challenges to you guys at the end of this, is to spend some time writing. I think just the simple act, and all those books, all those best-selling books of all time, from the Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People, and all the Tony Robbins, all the Zig Ziglar, they all talk about writing down not just your goals, but your mission. And then every time you make a decision after that, you filter it through it.
Yep.
And mine is just so simple. Mine was to bring communities together, like to bring really families. A family could be a community, it could be a massive community of tens of thousands of members like we have now, to bring them together and unite them through fishing. And that was the thing I love doing. It's something I wake up excited about doing. Like, what gives me the goosebumps every morning when we get those testimonials from a dad like you or a mom that says, hey, I just created the most amazing experience with my kids, or my dad or my grandfather who's about to pass away, or whatever it is, all through fishing because of this community. That gets me going. I feel like that is our purpose in life. And every time we've gotten away from that and chased something else is when I'm acting outside of that trifecta, and I feel like I'm not growing, and I'm like down in the dumps. And every time I have to realize, like, man, this is what I'm called to do. I can't be the best at this. I can't compare myself to ABC company or ABC influencer, whatever it is. And so where I'm going with all this is I'm pretty lucky because my personal mission aligns with my company mission. Yeah. Both are written down. Both look very similar in terms of wording, but not everyone is that fortunate.
No.
Right? So how do you get your purpose if it maybe is not in
it's like outside of what of
your 9-to-5 job?
Yeah,
or if you don't even have a job, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I believe most people's purpose probably doesn't align wholly with their jobs.
Yep.
You know, unless you've created that job.
Right.
You know, most of the time it might align somewhat or little bits. It might not align at all. But it's understanding that your purpose has zero to do with your job. Like, finding true fulfillment is not about your job. It's not about money. It's about finding joy and fulfillment. some of the happiest people in the world don't have great jobs, don't have a lot of money. I mean, some of the most miserable people I've ever met in my life didn't worry about money.
Yeah.
But life sucked otherwise for them. Like, they just were miserable. And so those don't correlate. It's understanding. And so for us, what we, for my belief is, whenever you find that community, it's why we talk about finding a church that loves Jesus and helps you grow closer to God. Like, whenever you find that, is that you dive in and you say, you know what, you're gonna find that purpose. Because if once again, if God created you, and we're operating from that standpoint, like, hey, if God created you, if you were created by God and he created you and he loves you, then the Bible says that he created you on purpose and with a purpose. And he also said the one thing that Jesus said he wanted you to do, to go in the world and tell people about him, to help people find this same love that you've already found. And so if that's the purpose, then for a lot of people, that purpose may not align, or at least may not in a very apparent way, align with their job. It may be one of those things where it's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to find my fulfillment and my purpose working with my local church, or working with a ministry, or a nonprofit in the area, and helping people find a better life, find a better way to find this grace and love, to find this understanding, and go, you know what? It's not just about one thing. And sometimes you can find ways to tie that in. I think about the couple that are feeding the people with the fish they catch.
Yeah, fillet of sole.
Yeah, fillet of sole. They took something they loved and they tied it to their fulfillment. And all of a sudden it is part of their fulfillment. And is it their full-time job? Well, for them, I don't know if it is. I don't think it is.
No.
But like,
they do it on every Tuesday. They fish, and then they go feed the homeless.
And they go feed the homeless with their fishing.
Yeah,
and
Greg and Cindy.
They've taken something they loved,
fishing,
their passion,
yeah,
and they've taken their personality, which is being able to care for people, and they've taken the giftings they have, the ability to fish, and they've tied all three of those things together, and they've been able to find fulfillment outside of their work. It had nothing to do with their job. They were like, hey, we're going to do all these things, and it ties directly into what God had for them, which is to make a difference in the world. Yep. In little ways and in big ways, like in understanding that whenever you say, well, I can't find fulfillment, I got work, I got bills. Everybody's got work and bills, and there are a lot of people that are fulfilled. And you find that, yes, not everybody is going to tie it in directly to their job, yep, but it doesn't mean that you can't find that you can't find it. And I think so often we just sort of settle, and we go, well, I'm happy. Happy is an emotion. Happy comes and goes, and literally we're all half a paycheck and one bad conversation away from being sad. I mean, like, let's be really honest. Like, it takes 2 seconds to go from happy to sad. Yeah. Fulfillment's different. It's understanding that even when you have a bad day, even when things aren't going the way you want to, even when you have an unhappy day, that you're still doing something to better the world. You're still trying, you're still fulfilling, and you feel like, you know what, like, I've been able to make a difference. I've been able to, for us at my church, and similarly, I think it's one of the reasons why me and you work so well together and get along so well is, like at our church, like our goal is to change family trees. I want parents to be the ones to lead their families closer to God. It's not about me as the pastor leading them. It's about me giving the tools to families to grow and become better. Yep. That's my goal. I want parents to be the leaders of the house, not the pastor. And I want the parents to lead spiritually and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, it's understanding that fulfillment is not, it doesn't have to take place at your job. For a lot of people, they're going to find their fulfillment on, Sundays or Wednesdays or whatever, working in the local church and teaching a kid's class, or singing on a stage, or running sound, or doing all that kind of stuff. And other ones, it's going to be once a week going and working in a local food bank and caring for people. Other ones, it might be fishing on Tuesday nights to help feed the homeless. Yep. Other ones, it might be something as simple as, what, I'm going to find people in need in my neighborhood. I'm going to go mow lawns for the lady down the street that is older and can't handle it anymore. I'm gonna there's a million ways to find it, and it's just sort of going, hey, what am I passionate about? What am I good at? And what fits my personality? Okay,
Yep.
well, how can I find fulfillment doing those three things, and then do it? So often we base it on happiness instead of looking for joy, which God says, hey, he's the bringer of joy. Happiness, once again, it's fleeting.
Yep.
But joy is something that a bad day is not going to take it away from you. Fulfillment is something the bad day, it doesn't take it away from you. It's something that is lasting. It's something that it has staying power.
Love it, man.
Yeah.
So let's talk about money with all this.
All right.
Because as you're talking through this, I'm putting myself where I was a while back, and I was driven by money, big time. And most of my decisions were not about, hey, is this going to bring joy to others? It was more, is this going to bring joy to me? And what I knew about joy was more money I had, the happier I was. Not fulfilled, but
Happier.
It feels good. You get a big check, it feels good. But I think that's one of the biggest problems. And what I've seen, at least in my experience, and I'm sure you can agree, that when usually someone finds their purpose, money is at the very, very bottom. Doesn't mean you can't make a lot of money pursuing your purpose, but usually that's the last thing you're worried about. And usually if you do find that one special gift that you have, whether it is your full-time job or whether it's a Tuesday night or it's a weekend or if it's helping out at a food bank or at a hospital, whatever it is, usually God will provide. Not usually, it usually always provides. And it's just I feel like so many people make that excuse, well, it's going to take a lot of money to do what I'm passionate about. It's going to take a lot of money to pursue this. Even Greg and Syndicate, they had that excuse. They didn't have a boat.
Yeah.
They didn't have a freaking boat. Like, how are we going to go catch enough fish every Tuesday to feed 40 people? And they kept pursuing it and fished from shore and telling people about it. And guess what happened? Someone gave them a boat.
Yeah.
Oh my!
Well,
God provided for them. Like, just because this is what we feel like we're called to do. Like, they found their purpose and went all in.
If your purpose isn't tied with your job, when you find fulfillment outside of that, on a Tuesday night fishing for homeless people, or on a Sunday morning, singing on the worship team at your local church, or working in the parking lot team at church, helping people find their place and just welcoming people to service. When you find fulfillment outside of your job, you're a happier person. And I say happier, you're a joyful person. Your life is finding fulfillment, which is going to lead to the rest of your life being better. It's just going to. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. But the fact is that whenever you are finding fulfillment in your life, you're going to walk in excited about what life has to offer. Whenever you go to work on Monday, you're still riding high because you're finding fulfillment in your life. And there's never been a time when somebody's been like, man, you're doing really bad at your job because you're fulfilled. Like, that's never a bad thing, and you're gonna do better generally. But in the end, I think that it comes down to understanding that fulfillment isn't about the money. Yes, money helps and makes things easier and nicer, but I look at my example for me. I spent years as a youth pastor, as a teaching pastor, and associate pastor at churches, and honestly, when I left doing that to start my church, because I started our church, I planted a brand new church. I was making more money as a staff pastor, just like not even the head pastor, just one of the pastors on staff at a larger church.
Wow.
I was making more money then than I am now. And I started the church 6 years ago. Like 6 years in, I'm still not at that point. But can I tell you, I am more fulfilled and more happy than I ever was. And can I also tell you that financially, life has been easier because the fulfillment has not been about the money. It's been about doing what God created me to do, which means all of a sudden, like, the other things aren't as big of a deal anymore. All of a sudden, like, it's not about those other things. It's about finding, for me, I want I would much rather find more and more fulfillment than I would to find more and more money in my bank account. And I understand that that's sort of a double-edged sword, because you're like, man, but I got to eat. Yeah, I get it. I mean, we all got to eat, and that there are times whenever you got to focus on that, and I get it. But just because you're focusing on that doesn't mean you can't find fulfillment. I mean, they're finding fulfillment on a Tuesday night fishing. Yep. We all have some time. I mean, we all do. I mean, there's none of us are going 24 hours a day at making the money, and if we are, then we're definitely not happy. The idea is that finding fulfillment doesn't have to start in changing the world, doesn't have to start in big ways. Like, making a difference in the world starts in little things, and you might go, well, they're only feeding 40 people. Yeah, but they just changed the world for those 40 people. Those 40 people got food, and it changed the world. It made a difference. Honestly, finding fulfillment, just being a dad or a mom and saying, you know what, like, I'm going to find fulfillment by, like, for me, like, my middle son, he's just turned 4, named Linus, and loves the idea of fishing. I haven't taken him, like, on, like, a big saltwater trip yet. Like, this year is going to be the time. I took my oldest, when he was about 4 years old on his first, like, big salt. They both have saltwater fished a little bit, but Linus, I've taken freshwater fishing a lot. I'm not good at freshwater fishing. I'm just not.
We were on fire today.
We were just lighting it up. I'll tell you what. And but I'm just not great at it. But I find fulfillment taking him and throwing a worm on there and watching him lose his mind when he catches a little bluegill or brim or something like that. Like I find these little, and that's a little thing, and I find this awesome moment of fulfillment in my life because my passion is my kids and my family. My giftings is being able to love on them and to share with them. My personality is all about, like, just showing him how to enjoy life and to find this. It's all of a sudden all three of those things tie together, and in that moment I'm finding this fulfillment by putting a little red worm on a tiny hook, and we're at some little local pond close to my house, and it took me 20 minutes to get there with stopping to get worms. Like, it wasn't a big deal in the eyes of the world, but I found fulfillment in that. And so it's not about always doing the big grandiose things. That's comparing yourself. I could compare my church to other churches all day long, and this church is running thousands of people and they're doing all these outreaches and ministries. Mine's not doing all that right now, but I'm still finding fulfillment because I'm seeing families grow closer to each other, grow closer to God together. I'm finding fulfillment because I'm seeing kids that are going to church with mom and dad and with grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles and these big whole families showing up together, and we're seeing family trees change, and I'm finding this fulfillment, and we might not be the biggest church, but I'm finding fulfillment because I'm operating in what God created me to operate in little ways. And so it's not you're gonna have to make money, you're gonna have to have a job, you're gonna have to do all that stuff, and if your fulfillment isn't tied to your job, then they're gonna be separate things. But it doesn't mean that you can't find fulfillment, and you can't find that true joy that comes, that hope that comes from operating in the way that God created you to operate. It just means that it might not be on a grand scale today, at least in your eyes. Right. But it's amazing how grand of a scale it is for the people whose lives you've changed. Even if it's not big to you, it's big to them. Like catching a bluegill, at Tenorock Lake over here in Lakeland might not be a big deal to me, but my 4-year-old's going to talk about it for a year.
Yeah, and who knows what might happen to him in the future. Just look at what Luke and I have done. Yeah. Had our parents and grandparents not spent all the time and energy and money taking us on countless trips fishing, we never would have done this.
Yep.
We probably would have been in our, not miserable, but very unfulfilling jobs. And we never would have taken the leap of faith to start Salt Strong had we not known how good it feels to go out there fishing with families and to get other people out fishing. And that's interesting. And that was something my grandfather, the choice he had to make, right? He had to sacrifice some of his job and money to do that with his son, my dad, and vice versa.
Yep.
And now look at the ripple effect, that we're reaching millions and millions of people every year. Pretty wild. One thing that helped me big time, because I know a lot of people still listening. All right, I got the trifecta, and we're gonna summarize that again in a second. But like, what's a good thing to start with? And I shared this story in my book, Fishing for Happiness. And it was the Ron Carson meeting. And Ron Carson, I'll just give you the 30,000-foot view. He still today is one of the biggest independent financial advisors in the country. And the guy is a rock star. People pay. I mean, he charges $80,000 for a speaking event. And he's that good. And so I go to this event. Like, it's talked up big time. It was tough to even get in the event. It's in Boston. So I flew to go see this guy speak. So I'm there, and I'm like waiting for all these sales, because I was all money driven. I'm waiting for him to like throw out some amazing sales and marketing ideas, because that's what I told him was going to happen. And the dude starts talking about death right off the bat. First thing he talks about, and I'm kind of looking around, and everyone else is kind of like, what? Why is he talking about death? He's talking about his funeral. And long story short, he says, guys, I'm going to give you the foundation before we talk about you guys making more money. This, because it was about making more money, right? The whole thing was for financial planners and wanted to make more money. He's like, let's talk about the foundation first. And he's like, I want you guys to spend, some serious time this morning thinking about your funeral. Imagine you're at your funeral right now, right? And imagine you're in the back and no one knows you're there because you already passed away, and you're watching your funeral happen. You're seeing your loved ones, whether it be your wife or your kids are still around, or maybe you're, depending on when you pass away, you don't know what it's going to look like. But imagine your current friends are there and they're mourning over you. And then imagine just 5 things that you would want everyone to say about you. If they could only say 5 things, what would they be? And it kind of like threw me off, because like I never really thought about that before. I was just trying to make money.
Yeah.
Why? Because money sounded a whole lot better than being poor, and that was my driving force. And so it really took me a lot to think about it. And I wrote down in the book the 5 things. It was like, to be a gracious person, be funny, and loving and kind and generous. And I looked at it and I was like, man, like that's what I want people to say about me, but I'm only really living like 2 of them. And it kind of hit me like in a dagger. I was like, well, holy smoke, what if I died tomorrow? Like, I'm not living my life. I'm not living in my fulfillment. I'm not living in my purpose. If my purpose ends up in result of people saying these 5 things about me, and I'm not living them now, what am I doing, right? And that was like a really eye-opening moment for me. And I still have that original sheet where I wrote those things down, and I don't look at them enough. But doggone, like that was a big change in my life. So I would challenge all of you, if you've never done that, take some time. Don't just do it in 2 seconds, and write it down. And if you're not if your life's not congruent with what you want people to say about you, then it's time to do a little bit of changing. And I think that's going to lead you one step closer to finding your purpose, because it did for me.
And one thing you'll never see, or rarely would you see on that list, is like, whenever I die, I want them to say, well, this guy was rich. He had lots of money.
And so we obviously talked about it in small groups. Not a single person in that room, and we're talking some wealthy people. I mean, guys who were already making 7 figures a year and wanted to make 8, like Ron. Not a single one said wealth or money on the 5 things.
Yeah,
not a single person.
Nobody would. I mean, very rarely. I mean, that's just not what the focus is on that. And so that shows you what's really important.
Yep.
And it's not about that other stuff. It's about finding fulfillment, man, finding joy and spreading that fulfillment and joy around, completely.
And then the other part in the Bible that helped me out a lot, because I think so much does come back to the money, and because that's what people think, oh, my purpose is to make money, be successful, and that can be great. I mean, you can end up giving a lot of money away and impacting a lot of people. Money's not bad at all. I think people get a misconception about money. It can be good, right?
Yeah, of course.
It can't be your driving force, but it definitely can it can definitely do a whole lot of good in this world. But in the Bible, it talks about that you're born in this world with nothing and you leave with nothing. Mm-hmm. And we all know that, right? Mm-hmm. And what Steve Jobs even said, there's nothing cool about being the richest guy in the cemetery.
Yeah.
No, right? You don't get an award for it. And yet so much of us spend so much of our time and our energy and our waking hours trying to accumulate all this stuff. And usually it's money or stuff that you buy with money, and yet we know we can't even take it with us. And usually we're because I know I chased it for many years. You chase the wrong stuff that gets you zero fulfillment, hoping it will at some point. Hey, if I have this much money, or if I do this, or if I get this big house, or if I get this new car, or if I get this job, then I'm going to go find fulfillment. Then I'm going to go find my purpose, right? And the Bible literally tells you you're going to die with nothing, so why waste your time chasing all this crap unless you're working in that trifecta again?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. You have finding your passion, finding your personality, and finding the gifts that you're good at, and tie those three things together, and the middle of that purpose is never going to be aimed at making money. You might end up making money off of it, which is awesome.
Hooray.
That's a great.
Yeah.
But here the crazy thing is, if you do follow that plan, like passion, personality and gifts, and you find your purpose in the middle of that, even if you do end up making money off of it, it's just going to be a bonus.
Yep.
It's never going to be something that, like, if you find that thing and you find fulfillment in it and you start making money at it, if the money stops coming in, you're still going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be so fulfilled by it.
And many times you will make some money at that because you're growing. You're having the time of your life, right? Just like Luke and I, we wake up so excited, so much energy. My energy level was like all-time high versus before it was like, oh, it's Monday. And now, like, I'm pumped for Monday. Like, I want to do big things. I want to change the world, make an impact. And usually when you're putting, even if it's not your job, if you're putting out that many good vibes, things happen, right? Even Greg and Cindy, it's the Tuesday night thing. It's opened up a lot of doors for them. I mean, a free, I don't know if it was completely free, but a boat that was at pennies in the dollar. They've had all kinds of massive donations coming up for them, but to help that community grow and to keep doing more. Like, good things are flooding in their way because they love what they're doing. People can see the passion in their eyes. They can see just in what they're doing on a day-to-day basis with these homeless people.
For sure.
And it's been amazing to see that. And that's just one of a million examples.
Oh, for sure.
And in one small town in Florida, right, that keeps growing. So you teach this. You called it the triangle, this little trifecta at your church. What's the one piece or the one dot, if you're doing the connected dots, that people have the most problem with, you think?
I think for a lot of people, it's one of those things that's probably a little bit different for everybody. Whenever I'm teaching that, we have a real simple test, like you answer yes or no, and it helps you discover like what your personality traits are and everything like that. And we also have one that sort of goes through and helps you discover like what your giftings are, your spiritual giftings and stuff like that, the gifts that God gave you, the abilities, and your passion. And so a lot of it's just, I would say there's not any one thing that's a struggle. It's just the struggle of being willing to find that thing and be able to understand that it has, once again, has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with what the world says is important. The whole idea of what, like going back to what I said at the beginning, know God, find freedom, discover your purpose, make a difference. Finding freedom is finding freedom from what the world thinks is important. The world thinks money is important. It's just what it thinks. And I'm not saying that it's an unimportant thing to have. I mean, obviously you have to have it. I got to eat. You got to pay bills. I mean, I get it, but it is not what brings joy or happiness. It just isn't. It makes life easier at times. And yes, there are moments whenever, obviously, I'm not saying anybody wants less of it. Obviously everybody wants to have more of it because it makes things easier, but it's not what brings you happiness or joy. And so it's understanding that, wait a minute, it's not about what the world says. It's about, and it's discovering. I think the hardest thing is just sort of going, wait a minute, it's rewiring the way we think about trying to find fulfillment. I think that's the hardest part. It's not because everybody, you'll find it different. It might be easy for you to find your passion, or you might have a hard time struggle like, well, man, what am I really passionate about? I like this and I like this and I like this. What am I passionate about? And that might be something you have to pray about and just sort of go on some self-discovery to figure out what you're passionate about. Finding what your personality is, what your giftings are. Those are things that are fairly simple that you can follow along and discover through some tests and really asking yourself the right questions.
Yep.
I would say probably your passion is the hardest of the three, but even so, I think the hard part really is rewiring your brain as to what really is going to find fulfillment for you.
And then just doing it, man.
And then just doing it.
Because you made the statement earlier that, your purpose has really kind of changed over the last couple of decades.
Yeah, completely.
But had you not just went, dove in and like leaned into one thing, you probably wouldn't have got there as quick. And
no.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I am, I talked about it a few weeks ago with us here, is that, like the fact that I dove into music made me comfortable on stage and communicating with people, but it also, diving into music led me to doing some things that weren't really good for my life, and led me down a path but here's the cool thing, is that those bad things I did and that path that I took has also made me better in my fulfilled area of being able to serve people and being able to understand when they're going through a hard time, when they're struggling with addiction, they're struggling with the needs, and the things that happen like that, and being able to help them as well in the midst of those hard times. And I've been able to, and so all these things, it's a life, man. It's what I tell people. I'll tell people when it comes to this stuff that it's not a race. A lot of times, I've heard people say, well, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's not even a marathon. It's life. It's life. There is, the ending is you die and then you go to heaven. Like, that's the ending. So there is no real death. I mean, if you're following Christ, I mean, you get to go into eternal life. That's awesome. And so, but it's not a race. It's life. It's not trying to be, take your fulfillment and go and be the best in the world at that one thing. It's about just finding fulfillment. In the same way I look at my church, it's not about being the biggest church right now. We'll be whatever God wants us to be. And so it's finding fulfillment in that moment. For you guys, it wasn't about making Salt Strong the biggest, fishing community on the planet. God will handle that, and it grows on its own. But you find that fulfillment along the way, and understand that this is a journey. This is life, man. And the Bible says that He came to bring life and bring it abundantly. Bring joy, bring fulfillment to your life. That's why Jesus came for us. He didn't come so that you could, just trudge through it. You're gonna have moments like that. You're gonna have moments when life is hard. Yeah. But when you're finding fulfillment, it's amazing how easy it is to get to those hard moments, because all of a sudden you realize that my joy is not based on the hard life. It's based on the fulfillment that God gives me. That the bad things that happen, they still suck, but they're not where I am pulling my strength from anymore. I pull my strength. So it's rewiring the way you think to find fulfillment in things that the world might think is crazy, on the surface at least.
Yep. I love it. Trifecta.
That's right.
That's where it's at, dude. Well, guys, we'll probably have more on this, because as we're talking, I'm even thinking of a couple of things that would take us down another 15 or 20 minutes. But this is, I think, an amazing starting point. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. I think one just easy thing to do is to do those five just statements, not big sentences, just one words. For me, like being a family person, right? A family man, to being generous, giving, loving, fun, whatever it is for you, it's not going to be the same for all of us. Start with that, and then spend some time on this triangle, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I love that.
It's not that complicated.
Yeah. What do you want people to remember you for? And then what are your passions? What are your personalities? What are your spiritual giftings? And then go forward. If you're watching or listening to this and you want to go through that process, I can email you the tests that that help you figure out your spiritual giftings, help you figure out your personality and stuff like that, and help you discover what your passions are, so you can start trying to find fulfillment. I'd love to do that. I'd love to help.
Maybe we can just put it in the show notes or something.
Yeah, totally.
saltstrong.com/unchurched. saltstrong.com/unchurched. We'll have all the episodes there. We're gonna got our own little page now, dude.
Yeah,
it's a real movement.
It is. I love it. I'm loving it. I'm loving being able to email with some of you guys and talk, and I know Joe does too. And
Yeah,
we're
and
just
so
enjoy it.
going forward, though, we are now asking for a tithe. It's not money, ironically. It's just a share. That's all we want, guys. So please do share this with someone, and then leave a review. That's massive for us, regardless if you're on iTunes or Stitcher, Spotify. I don't think Spotify does reviews, but Stitcher and iTunes do. It helps out big time for this to be found in the whole Apple iTunes algorithm, and it helps us get just more momentum for this, and it makes it easy for us to keep paying money in our time, obviously, even though we thoroughly enjoy being out on a boat, being fishers of men, but it makes it so much easier. So that's all we ask is if you like this at all and you're still listening, please leave a review, subscribe to the podcast, and then finally, if you're in Central Florida, go check out old Pastor Johnny.
Yeah, come on out, discoverfamilychurch.com over in Lakeland. We're getting ready to move into a new building.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited. And so having fun right up there by the Lakeland Square Mall. So
love it.
Easy to get to.
Cool. Guys, thank you so much. We will be talking to you on the next Unchurch. We out.
Peace.